When the WNBA offered a groundbreaking $1 million salary floor, it should have marked a turning point. Instead, the Women's National Basketball Players Association labeled it a slap in the face, a move that quickly became one of the most polarizing decisions in league history. For average fans, the backlash was swift. The disconnect between elite athletes and everyday supporters, many of whom see a seven-figure salary as a dream, has never felt wider. Behind the scenes,
if you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
this PR misstep inflamed existing tensions, culminating in Aliyah Boston's high-profile departure from Unrivaled after a confrontation with Alyssa Thomas. By then, the crisis wasn't just about money. It was about trust, leadership, and the direction of the sport itself. This moment was supposed to be the beginning of a new era. Instead, the sport is hanging by a thread. Unrivaled's messy pivot towards sensationalism has done little to help, and the WNBA's hands are tied by outside investors demanding financial caution. With the 2025 season fast approaching, the league's future is clouded by logistical uncertainty and fan frustration. Unless a united front emerges, and fast, the rapid growth seen in 2024 could vanish just as quickly as it arrived. Aliyah Boston quit. Not just the game, not just the team. She walked away from Unrivaled, the player-founded league that was supposed to represent the future of women's basketball. And she did it after a very real, very public clash with Alyssa Thomas on the court. Yes, it was physical. Yes, it was heated. But more than that, it was symbolic. Because this wasn't just a player walking away from a game. This was a decorated young star saying enough. Enough with the chaos. Enough with the politics. Enough with the way women's basketball, at what should be its peak, is pulling itself apart from the inside. The altercation between Boston and Thomas wasn't the beginning of the story. It was the boiling point. Because while that moment went viral, the real drama was already playing out behind the scenes. It's not just about Unrivaled. It's about everything swirling around it. Fractured leadership, stalled negotiations, conflicting incentives, and a fan base that's getting whiplash from all the dysfunction. Right now, the WNBA is locked in a labor battle with the Players' Union. We're just months away from the 2025 season, and still, there's no agreement in place. The league put forward what many consider a milestone offer, a contract topping $1 million a year for top players, plus revenue sharing. Sounds huge, right? That's historic money in the world of women's sports. But instead of progress, it triggered outrage. The union rejected it, calling the offer a slap in the face. And just like that, the conversation turned sour. Because while the players are demanding equity, and rightfully so, the way the message was delivered alienated a massive portion of the fan base. Regular people saw seven-figure contracts being dismissed as offensive. People working multiple jobs, struggling to pay rent, saw millionaire athletes saying it's not enough. And the narrative turned. Fast. This was supposed to be the time women's basketball won. The 2024 season broke every record. Attendance, ratings, media attention. Caitlin Clark became a cultural force. Angel Reese brought a whole new energy to the game. The sport was finally being talked about the way it always should have been. And now, we're watching it unravel. Here's where things get even more complicated. Some of the key voices in the union, the ones leading this charge, Nneka Ogwumike and Breanna Stewart, are also co-founders of Unrivaled. So the same people rejecting the WNBA's offer are running the only other professional platform for players to turn to if the WNBA season falls apart. That's not just bad optics. That's a structural problem. If the WNBA season doesn't happen, Unrivaled benefits. The players go there. The sponsors follow. The attention shifts. So it doesn't matter how pure the intentions are, because to the outside world, it looks like a conflict of interest. And that's how you lose trust. The union is supposed to represent all players. But when its top leaders are also business owners in a rival league, it's fair to ask, whose best interests are really being prioritized? Meanwhile, Unrivaled itself is floundering. Launched with the promise of player empowerment, creative freedom, and a focus on athletic excellence, the league has drifted far from its mission. Viewership is down. The brand is inconsistent. And the attention it is getting? It's mostly due to drama, not basketball. Viral clips of altercations. Mid-game walk-offs. Players storming out. That's what's dominating the conversation. And that is not how you build a sustainable league. It plays straight into the outdated stereotypes women's sports have been battling forever. That it's less about competition, more about conflict. That it's all emotion and no skill. Unrivaled had a real chance to challenge those narratives. Instead, it's reinforcing them. So when Aliyah Boston walked away, it wasn't just about one fight. It was a rejection of that entire environment. She didn't flinch. She didn't stick around to play the media game. She left. And in doing so, she made a statement that cut deeper than any tweet or post-game comment ever could. She's not just walking away from a player-led league. She's walking away from the idea that this is what empowerment looks like now. The WNBA, meanwhile, is also stuck. Back in 2022, the league sold 16% of its equity to outside investors. That gave them a financial boost, but it also gave those investors power. Now, those same stakeholders are pumping the brakes on aggressive salary increases. Their priority is stability, not taking big financial risks. So even if the league wanted to meet the players' demands, their hands are partially tied. Buying back that 16% might give the WNBA its autonomy again. But here's the catch. Post-2024, the league's value has exploded. Caitlin Clark alone drove viewership to new heights. The entire ecosystem is booming, which means that equity stake is now worth hundreds of millions. Reacquiring it would require massive capital, or debt, or even more NBA subsidies, none of which are ideal. So now we've got a league that can't afford to give players what they want, a union rejecting what fans think is a dream salary, and a rival league that's imploding under the weight of its own contradictions. And while all of this is happening, the 2025 season gets closer every day. Professional sports don't just start. They require planning. Months of it. Team logistics, TV schedules, travel accommodations, marketing, contracts. And none of that can move forward without a collective bargaining agreement. So the longer this standoff continues, the less likely it is that the season even happens. We're heading toward a lockout, not because there's no money, no talent, or no audience, but because leadership can't align. And it's heartbreaking, because this sport finally had the momentum it deserved. For the first time, it wasn't a niche. It wasn't under the radar. It was part of the mainstream sports conversation. And not because of scandals or stunts, but because the product on the court was that good. And now, the headlines are all about dysfunction. Players walking out. Fans lashing out. Analysts like Rebecca Lobo warning that the union's rhetoric might be alienating casual supporters. She's not wrong. The tone has shifted, and not in a way that builds bridges. You can fight for better pay and still acknowledge progress. You can push for equity without framing every offer as an insult. You can be bold without being combative. Because here's the thing. Most people want to support the players, but they also want to feel like there's a plan, a vision, a future. Right now, all they're seeing is friction, and friction burns out fast. The 2024 season showed us what women's basketball could be. The skill, the energy, the marketability, the real-time proof that if you build it, people will show up. But if this continues unchecked, that momentum will disappear just as fast as it arrived. Aliyah Boston's exit was a red flag, a breaking point, a reminder that even the most promising stars are losing faith in the system around them. And if the people building this future can't agree on where they're going, how long before the fans stop following altogether? Let us know what you think. Is this a fight for fairness gone sideways? Is leadership fractured beyond repair? Was Aliyah Boston right to walk away? Or is this just adding fuel to the fire? Drop a comment. Hit like if you're rooting for resolution over drama, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in what's turning into the most pivotal moment in women's basketball history. And this is where it all starts to feel like a slow-motion collapse. Because let's be honest, no one expected it to go this way. Not after 2024. Not after the WNBA finally cracked through the mainstream and earned the headlines instead of begging for them. Not after years, decades of underexposure, underfunding, and underestimated talent. Aliyah Boston was supposed to be one of the players who benefited most from that rising tide. A centerpiece of the Indiana Fever. A former #1 draft pick. Young, dominant, marketable, respected. She was exactly the kind of star you build around. But now, her decision to quit Unrivaled has turned into a symbol of how badly things have derailed. Because if someone like Boston, who's never been known for causing a scene, feels pushed far enough to walk away mid-season, what does that say about where things stand? And more importantly, where they're headed? Unrivaled was never supposed to be a battleground. It was born out of frustration, yes, but also out of hope. The idea was simple. Give elite women's basketball players a space where they control the narrative, where the money didn't come with strings, where the games weren't just entertainment, but empowerment. But somewhere along the way, the mission blurred. Instead of building a sustainable, well-run product, Unrivaled leaned into drama. Instead of leaning on athleticism, it started chasing virality. Instead of elevating players, it ended up dividing them. And now the headlines are no longer about incredible 3-on-3 play. They're about who stormed off, who got into it mid-game, and who's leaving next. It's everything women's sports have worked for years to avoid, becoming the punchline, the spectacle, the sideshow. And when that happens, even unintentionally, it feeds right back into the same tired narratives that critics of women's sports have used forever. That it's not serious, that it's too emotional, that it's just drama in uniforms. That's the real damage here, not just to Unrivaled's image, but to the credibility of the entire ecosystem it was supposed to support. And meanwhile, over in the official WNBA camp, the temperature isn't any cooler. We're now weeks deep into what feels like a total communication breakdown between the league and the WNBPA. The players rejected the most lucrative offer ever presented, over $1 million a year, plus revenue sharing. And instead of momentum, it triggered massive backlash. Why? Because outside the world of high-stakes sports negotiations, $1 million isn't just money, it's fantasy. And when you tell the public that it's not enough, you'd better have a clear, compelling way to explain why. But that's not what happened. The union's framing, calling it a slap in the face, hit fans like a gut punch. It created a PR nightmare. Not because fans don't believe in equity. Many do. But because they're being asked to understand a nuanced, legitimate labor issue through sound bites that sound dismissive and ungrateful. That's not a messaging issue, it's a strategy issue. Because if your movement depends on public support, alienating the very people who've just started showing up is the last thing you want to do. Even analysts who've been staunch advocates for the league, people like Rebecca Lobo, are waving red flags. When they're saying the rhetoric is backfiring, it's not coming from a place of malice. It's coming from frustration, from watching years of progress hang in the balance because leadership can't or won't course correct. And let's talk about that leadership. When two of the top union leaders also own a rival league, how is that supposed to build trust? No matter how clean the intentions, the optics are terrible. And the longer this drags on, the harder it becomes to separate what's a negotiation tactic and what's a business play. Because let's be real, if the WNBA season gets canceled, Unrivaled wins by default. It becomes the only game in town, the only platform for players, the only show fans can watch. That's a powerful incentive, and it casts a huge shadow over every decision made by people who are supposed to be advocating for the WNBA's future, not replacing it. And then there's the money. The WNBA's hands aren't exactly free. Back in 2022, they gave up 16% of the league to outside investors to raise capital. And those investors? They're not here for revolution. They want safe bets. ROI. Growth, sure, but growth they can control. So even if the WNBA wants to meet the players where they're at, they can't do it unilaterally. Investor approval is now baked into the system. And yes, buying back that 16% is technically possible. But good luck doing that now that the league's valuation has skyrocketed post-Caitlin Clark. The price tag could run into the hundreds of millions, which means the WNBA is stuck. The players are stuck. And the fans? They're caught in the crossfire. And here's the clock everyone's ignoring. The 2025 season doesn't just begin in May. It takes months of groundwork to pull off. Travel, rosters, training camps, media deals, sponsorship activations. It all hinges on stability. No agreement means no prep. No prep means no season. That's not a threat. It's a calendar problem. And right now, we're running out of dates. The sad part? The interest is there. The demand is real. We just saw the biggest season in league history. Young fans are engaged. Merch is selling. Games are trending. But if that momentum isn't protected, it will disappear. Not because of the talent, not because of the fans, but because of dysfunction, because of leadership that can't get on the same page, because of infighting that makes the entire sport look unstable. That's the danger. And Aliyah Boston saw it and left. She didn't rant. She didn't call a press conference. She just said, "I'm done," and walked away. And that speaks volumes. Because if she's had enough, how many others are feeling the same way behind the scenes? And how long until one of them says it out loud? This moment, right here, right now, should be one of unity. A time when the league, the union, and the fans work together to build on everything that 2024 delivered. But instead, it feels like every part of the machine is pulling in a different direction. It's disjointed. It's confusing. It's exhausting. And fans can feel that. They want to support the players. They want to see the sport grow. But they also want stability. A season. A league that doesn't implode every time a contract negotiation hits a snag. That's not too much to ask. So where does this go? Does the WNBA bend to the pressure? Do the players rethink their messaging? Does Unrivaled clean up its act before it becomes a cautionary tale? Or does all of this implode? Does 2025 become the season that never was? That's what's on the line. Not just a few deals, not just a few headlines, but the credibility of the sport itself. Aliyah Boston's exit was a signal. Whether anyone listens is the question. This is what unraveling in real time looks like. Because even now, especially now, there's still this frustrating, maddening truth. Women's basketball shouldn't be in crisis. Not after the breakthrough of 2024. Not after proving, finally and undeniably, that the audience is there. That the product is elite. That the players are ready. That the culture is ready. But the leadership? Completely out of sync. Aliyah Boston's exit from Unrivaled wasn't just a warning shot. It was a full-blown alarm bell. And what's worse is how quiet it's been since. No official statement. No real explanation. Just a superstar in her prime, choosing not to participate in the very platform that was supposed to empower her. And here's the part no one wants to admit. Her silence is louder than any headline. Because if Aliyah Boston doesn't feel heard in a player-run league, what does that say about where the power really lies? Let's zoom out. Unrivaled was supposed to be the players' answer to everything the WNBA couldn't offer fast enough. Money, flexibility, media control. A place where athletes weren't just players, but owners, creators, equity holders. It sounded like a dream. And maybe for a minute it was. But dreams fall apart when reality walks in. And the reality is that Unrivaled, in its current state, is unstable. The viewership is dropping. The structure feels chaotic. The branding is confusing. And worst of all, the product is being overshadowed by the drama. The promise was player-led excellence. What fans are seeing is a revolving door of public flare-ups and viral fights. That's not innovation. That's bad business. And when you layer on the fact that the same people running Unrivaled are also representing players in the WNBA's labor negotiations, the whole thing starts to look like a house of mirrors. Who benefits if the WNBA season doesn't happen? Unrivaled. Who benefits from labor strife and tension? Still Unrivaled. Who's supposed to be fighting for the best possible WNBA outcomes? The same people who own Unrivaled. That's not just a messy overlap. That's an unresolvable conflict of interest. And players are noticing. The fans are noticing. The media is already talking about it. Trust doesn't just erode overnight. It erodes because of these exact dynamics, where nothing feels clear, where every move feels strategic in the wrong way, and where the lines between empowerment and exploitation start to blur. And it couldn't be happening at a worse time. Because while the WNBA's internal gears are grinding, The clock is still ticking. And not a hypothetical clock. A real one. A professional sports season doesn't just appear. It takes months of coordination. Broadcast deals, arena bookings, travel logistics, rosters, sponsorship campaigns, media training, marketing activations. All of it depends on the league having certainty. And right now, there's no certainty. The CBA is still stalled. The players want more. The league is blocked by investor control. And every single day, without movement, puts the 2025 season deeper into jeopardy. You think ESPN's going to wait around until April for a schedule? You think sponsors are going to pour money into a league that might cancel? They won't. They'll cut bait. They'll shift focus. They'll protect their investment. And when that happens, the league's momentum doesn't just pause, it dies. And it doesn't matter that Caitlin Clark just had the most commercially successful college career in women's basketball history. It doesn't matter that Angel Reese is a walking highlight reel with more social reach than some NBA players. It doesn't matter that the quality of the product has never been better. Because the momentum isn't just about performance. It's about perception. And the current perception? Instability, dysfunction, infighting, all of it draining public confidence in a sport that just got people to believe. Even fans who were all in last year are looking around now asking, what's going on? They tuned in for competition, not confusion. They showed up for progress, not politics. And that's the tragedy here. The WNBA had the moment, and now it's being squandered. Not because the players aren't ready, not because the talent isn't there, but because leadership on every side is failing to protect it. Aliyah Boston didn't quit because she couldn't handle the heat. She quit because the kitchen is on fire and no one seems to be reaching for the extinguisher. And when players at her level start walking away, not just from a team or a contract, but from an entire league, it forces a reckoning. What exactly are we doing? Because right now, it's hard to tell whether this is a fight for fairness or a turf war disguised as advocacy. If the WNBA wants to win over the public, it needs to rethink its messaging. Rejecting a seven-figure salary and framing it as insulting might be rooted in real grievances, but the optics are terrible. It sends the wrong signal at the worst possible time. Fans who are just starting to get invested now feel like outsiders to a fight they don't understand. They don't know what's fair or unfair. They just know what sounds tone-deaf. And the league itself? It needs to stop pretending that it can keep playing defense forever. Passing the blame onto investors might be technically accurate, but it's not leadership. At some point, you have to take ownership of the fact that you sold part of your autonomy away. Now you're boxed in, and it's your players paying the price. And Unrivaled? It needs to decide what it is. Is it a legit, sustainable competitor with long-term vision? Or is it a flash-in-the-pan content vehicle built on clickbait and clout? Because right now, it's looking like the latter. And if that's the case, then players like Boston walking away won't be the exception. They'll be the beginning of the end. The game deserves better than this. The players deserve better. The fans, too. But until the people at the top start acting like the moment they're in is historic and not just transactional, we're going to keep watching this moment fall apart. Let us know your take. Are you still hopeful for the 2025 season? Do you think the leadership can turn it around? Or has the damage already been done? Drop a comment. Hit like if you're still rooting for this sport to get back on track, and subscribe. We'll keep following every twist, every walk-off, and every boardroom battle. Because at this point, it's not just about basketball. It's about whether anyone in power actually cares enough to save it.